Hey everybody, Alex Miller here. I want to talk about some interesting recent events around data privacy in Nigeria, and then point out a few things about why these events are interesting. Broadly, I think there's really interesting stuff going on with data privacy in Africa right now. And there's a lot that you could point to about how things are different or similar to parallel events in the United States and Europe that get more press here in the United States. And I think it's really interesting to look at these things. You might enlighten yourself. So, what happened? The Nigerian government essentially turned off 73 million SIM cards, which is to say, they essentially shut down 73 million cell phones. So, to give this some context, there are 198 million SIM cards known to the Nigerian telco operators. So, this is essentially turning off a third of the phones in the country. And they did this because these SIM cards were not linked to the national identity number database as Nigerian law requires. And so, if you're not familiar with this, this is essentially a master identity number like social security number, driver's license number, all rolled into one. It's linked to biometric information like your fingerprints and a picture of your face, maintained in the government database, and they want you to link your cell phone to it too. So you can already see here people are getting privacy concerns about this. Nobody really knows the full story of why these 73 million SIM cards were not linked, but you can track down various people and interview them, and they'll give you some of the reasons you would expect, like, I don't feel like this adequately protects my privacy, or I don't really trust the government to handle the cybersecurity on this well. I'm worried I will end up a victim of identity theft, etc. Now, there's some general things going on in Nigeria, and I think that they're broadly true of a number of other African countries as well that are worth introducing for context here. So, cellular infrastructure is much more important in Nigeria than it is in the United States, as I understand things. It's quite interesting from an engineering standpoint. There's not anything intrinsically better about wired technology versus wireless. So, if you started getting this kind of infrastructure a little bit later when wireless technology was a little better, why would you ever have landline phones? And I believe that's been the story in Nigeria and a number of other countries in Africa. A whole lot of stuff passes through your cell phone that doesn't do so in the United States. So it's a really big deal, really cramping people's style to shut off their SIM card. We have WhatsApp in the United States, but in some of the research I did on this topic, a lot of people said they're just going to lean on WhatsApp after the government turned off their phone. And for those of you who are internationally minded, WhatsApp, in a lot of ways, in my observation, is much bigger outside of the United States. Okay, so in the defense of the Nigerian government here, these kind of issues intersect with really substantive security problems in Nigeria in a way that isn't true here. So, you may have heard of Boko Haram. The Nigerian government has been in a pretty ugly 12-year-long war with Islamist militants in northern Nigeria. And really scary shit happens. Like, they'll show up and they'll just kidnap a whole school full of children. So there really is some real pressure to do whatever you can do to figure out what's going on and to better regulate events like this. Finally, there's a lot of kind of like parallels country to country and non-parallel. So you may have seen in some of my past videos me talking about Huduma Namba, which is the analog to this national identity number in Kenya. Very similar story, very similar, heavy duty, lots of information, centralized government identity program. Similar story where they're trying really hard to get everybody in it, and they're not getting everybody in it, so you could check that out too. As an American, I certainly noticed that they're doing some heavy duty stuff on the national level. It's true in both the United States and Europe that there are very large scale, vaguely federalized institutions. So in the United States, you have states versus the federal government. In Europe, you have the individual countries in the EU versus the EU. And this federalism, anytime federalism comes up, I think it has a really interesting impact on data privacy issues. In the United States, we tend to be very paranoid about giving the government these kind of powers, but in practice, we're paranoid about the federal government. So I do carry around a government ID card with my picture on it. It's called my driver's license. It's issued by the state of Missouri and not the federal government. I'm guessing if you tried to have a federal ID card in the United States, people would be fucking pissed and it wouldn't happen. But this is, of course, not the story in Africa. The political situation is not the same. And then a number of sort of the more developed countries, especially ones with security problems like Nigeria, have been instituting these national level heavy duty ID programs. And they've produced a lot of interesting stories for me to talk about data privacy. And just to kind of close down this video, this kind of stuff, it doesn't get in the nightly news in the United States. If you're interested in data privacy, pay attention to events in Africa because there's a lot of interesting stuff going down over there and you might learn something.